Hello, Mystics and Monsters. My name is Tabiusgain, and we've been talking a lot about the Shadow Isles on the channel recently, and I'm kind of thinking variety is the spice of life. So instead of talking about, like, horrifying otherworldly monstrosities hanging around somewhere, like, cursed Blessed Isles or whatever, let's talk about horrifying otherworldly monstrosities hanging out in the Freljord, because this is Silence for the Damned, a short story, one of the long short stories that Riot released have been releasing recently, and this one specifically is about the Freljord, Sejuani, Udyr, and Volibear. And it was released, I believe, in conjunction with the War Mother comics. Like, Riot has been doing some work trying to build out the conflict in the Freljord and the personalities involved, and this is sort of part of that, clarifying a lot about who Udyr is in the current state of the lore, how he relates to the Freljord, which is a region he's always been a part of for a good long while now, but it's always been kind of unclear how he was supposed to fit in there, and giving us a little bit of a... Volibear is technically in this story, I think, but also kind of not, because that's Volibear, then some changes are going to be happening to that champion, that's for damn sure. Anyway, because this is one of the long short stories, you're going to have to read the whole thing for yourselves, and fortunately, it's actually a quite good short story. Like, it's well written, it's engaging, most of the language is really good, I don't have a lot of nitpicks for it, which is fairly rare, so you go and read it for yourself and enjoy it. For the purposes of this video, I'm going to do as short of a summary as I can of the general plot, and then we'll go through it and look over all of the notes that I've taken over the course of the story. So, Silence for the Damned. Basically, the plot goes something like this. Sejuani is the War Mother of the Winter's Claw. Udyr is her mentor and one of her old teachers who sort of hangs around, gives her advice, and tries to make sure that she doesn't do anything profoundly stupid while being the War Mother of the Winter's Claw. Sejuani is really pissed at the Avarosans because the Avarosans keep growing. Like, Ashe is having a lot of success gathering people to her, and she grows more and more powerful all the time in her quest to unite the Freljord. Sejuani, as you may know if you've read the War Mother comics in particular, is not super jazzed about that. She kind of feels like Ashe is stupid and weak and dumb, so she's decided to make her own unified Freljord tribe with blackjack and hookers, and Ashe can't come. She can't be part of the clubhouse. And it's going sort of okay. Like, she's doing fairly well, but at this point she's facing an enemy settlement of people who have refused to join the Winter's Claw. She's kind of stretched thin on supplies, and her army is tired, and she's not 100% confident that alone they can take down the settlement and actually keep adding victories to their scorecard, which is really the only way that they're going to grow. So Sejuani has decided to seek help from the Ursine. Now, the Ursine is another tribe, as it were, within the Freljord. They are specifically people who are adherents of Volibear, or as this story calls him, the Volibear. Now, Volibear, if you remember, is a demigod in the Freljord pantheon, as it were. Just like Ornn and Anivia, he's one of the demigods who's sort of responsible for creating the world of the Freljord, at least according to Freljordian legend. He's a very powerful creature, not quite a god, but about as close as you can possibly get in the League of Legends universe. Udyr is like, we should not summon the Ursine, because the Ursine are really dangerous, and it's a super bad idea. And Sejuani's like, no, it's going to be fine. I have a good plan. This is going to go perfectly well. And Udyr's like, you know, your mother probably wouldn't have done that. And then Sejuani gets really annoyed because she doesn't like her mother. She kind of hates her mother, and she thinks her mother is weak and stupid and is not good at anything, and she doesn't want to be anything like her mother. And Udyr's like, your mother wasn't that bad. And Sejuani's like, screw you. We're going to do the thing. I don't want to listen to you anymore. So Udyr's like, okay, fine, I can't really argue with you because you are the War Mother. So they summon the Ursine, and it is a summoning ritual. It's not, they don't just like send a letter or a carrier pigeons. Like, they line people up around these giant fires, and they burn sacrifices, and they douse themselves in bear blood, and you have the singers doing this creepy chanting thing, like, summon the Ursine. Like, it's just all kind of very scary stuff. And the Ursine respond. They show up, and they are mostly human. Like, some of them are probably still human. Maybe? We hope so. And some of them are not so much. The largest of them, a huge bear-like thing lumbered out of the forest, where its head should have been a decayed elk's skull rested on a mane of black feathers. Eyes glowing with blue fire, it opened its jaws to reveal a child's face inside its maw. Then the child opened its own mouth too, spewing a foul brown liquid. Other nightmares followed it from the wood, limping, crawling, and shambling forward. So these people are partly some of them are humans, some of them are not so human, some of them are human shamans, like Udyr, who can call on the powers of animals, who have been taken over by the powers of those animals, specifically by the power of the spirit of the bear, the spirit of the Volibear. And Udyr recognizes a bunch of shamans that he knew once upon a time in the Ursine's ranks, because the Volibear is an extremely powerful entity that controls their minds. And Udyr is like, well, this is definitely gonna go incredibly badly. And then the Volibear itself shows up. Walls of muscle, each limb larger than a man, propelled the beast forward. Its broken ancient armor of dark metal plates was caked with brown by the dried gore of 100 battles. Broken weapons rusted with age jutted from its back and shoulders. One half of its face had been stripped of flesh, revealing oily bone, teeth, and horns. From its mouth, an unnatural black blood dripped. Its 4 eyes, impossibly ancient, alien, and pitiless, looked over Sejuani and Udyr. The Volibear's consciousness crushed everything with its purity. So the Volibear is essentially just incredibly mentally powerful. It has an incredible psychic power to dominate those around it. And Sejuani, it comes like this close to pledging her entire tribe, all of the Winter's Claw, as sacrifices to the Volibear. And it's only Udyr who just barely manages to be like, no, she's not pledging the whole tribe, not the whole tribe. You can have the people you kill if you fight with us in battle. They're yours, but the tribe, please don't touch those. And the Volibear is sort of not happy about being denied the whole tribe of the Winter's Claw, but they goad him into accepting the alliance for now. And at the end of the battle, Udyr confronts the Volibear, who's eating the dead, and, doing stuff with them. Udyr climbed up the rubble of the stairway to the ruined square. Surrounded by tall stone buildings, he found the monster waiting for him. Alone in the middle of the city, the bear spirit's avatar impaled corpses on stakes arranged in some unknowable pattern. Black branches and roots grew from the speared bodies around the beast, like worms slowly crawling from the earth. The flesh and fur on the Volibear's face had healed. Its muscles seemed thicker, stronger than before. The Volibear's eyes turned to Udyr as the shaman approached. Across its face, a dozen new eyes bloomed, each as dark and cold as a spider. And Udyr confronts this monstrosity, this Volibear, and pledges to protect Sejuani from him. Like, the Volibear intends to take her. It intends to consume her or dominate her in some way or another. And Udyr's like, you're not gonna do that, because I'm gonna kick your ass if you do. Even though he's not super certain that he can actually kick this thing's ass, because as it turns out, it's very powerful. Anyway, Sejuani gets the ally she wants, the rebellion is crushed, and the Winter's Claw lives on in an uneasy alliance with the tribe of the Volibear. So like I said, the story itself is quite well written. I don't really have a lot of, I could do some nitpicks, but there's gonna be nothing that you haven't heard before in my other videos, and honestly, none of the nitpicks are really impacting my enjoyment of the story. So let's talk about some of the implications of the story that we've got going on here, because there's like a few. Now, I haven't looked at Volibear's character design for a while, and I hadn't looked at his lore for a while, so I decided to go and check whether it mentions anything about him being a 12-eyed alien Lovecraftian horror from beyond the pales of madness in the minds of men. And no, Volibear's lore says that he's still an ordinary mortal tribal leader he's just the leader of the Ursine tribe, who are also a bunch of bears, and then he gets hit by lightning and he has superpowers now, and then he enters into an alliance with Sejuani to help. Like, this Volibear right here, the one we have the lore for, is not at all the same character that we encounter in this particular story. And that's because Volibear's biography has not been updated yet. So the biography still says that he's the tribal leader that he used to be, like, I think a couple of years, like sometime after the lore retcon, he was changed into this. His blurb on his universe page has a different version of him. The thunderous demigod known as the Thousand-Pierced Bear is the battle spirit of the Freljord. Thousands of years of constant and bitter wars fought in the coldest winters have hardened Volibear into a truly indomitable force, hurling bolts of lightning from the highest peaks. And when snowy tempests rage down, it can only mean that he is on the attack once more. Any who dare to face him may find themselves joining his fierce army of Ursine warriors, assuming they do not fall victim to his savage claws. So this is more like the Volibears he's described in this horrifying story, but he's still, like, the Volibear, as described in Silence for the Damned, is an eldritch Lovecraftian horror monstrosity. It's like this mutated, horrifying battle. You got a bear with 2 mouths over here, and with like a skull on it, and this creepy priest who controls them. That's not the Volibear we see in this story. So the questions in my mind in relation to Volibear is, are we seeing a preview of what his eventual rework is going to be? Like, are they going to actually rework him into a terrifying, horrifying, sort of Lovecraftian, ancient, shamanic horror of the far north? Because that would be rad as hell, and I think that would be super cool, but I'm not sure it would work with the idea of Volibear as a demigod on the level of someone like Ornn, who is emphatically not like a mind-controlling hellbeast from the Valley of Madness or anything like that. So the thing I think might be going on here is that, as Udyr says here, some even said the Volibear had been a man once, a great shaman and spirit walker who'd surrendered himself to the bear spirit so completely that it was able to truly manifest through him. But looking at the scale of this monster, he doubted that this thing could have ever been a man. Right, so the question here is the Volibear, as it shows up in this story, the leader of the Ursine tribe, as it were, is that Volibear himself? Or is that merely something that has taken on so much of Volibear's power that it's twisting it in unnatural ways? Like, does this really represent what Volibear wants to be, what it wants to be? Or is this some kind of corruption happening because of a something-something thing? That would be one way to preserve the classic Volibear while still having this terrifying villain playing around in the Freljord. But we will see how exactly that shakes out. I'm really curious about it because I really frickin' dig the idea. Like, because the Freljord kind of needs that. The Freljord has the Lovecraftian horror element in that the Watchers in the Abyss and the Void threatens to break through the Howling Abyss at any moment. And they, of course, are like ancient cosmic entities from beyond the stars that shatter minds merely by existing and stuff like that, which is very Lovecraftian, but that's cosmic horror. With Volibear, we get a different version of the Lovecraftian horror, which is the profound fear of the other, the terrifying powers of old and unknowable magic, the frightening aspect of the gods, which, I mean, I don't want to get into the history of it, because the history of it is really uncomfortable, and Lovecraft was super racist and stuff like that, but it's something that comes from the profound fear of the barbaric other, which is something you have to be careful about. You have to be careful where you stand with that stuff and how you present it, but it's also a really interesting space to explore because it speaks to some very fundamental human anxieties that, like, we don't understand nature fully. Like, we think, oh yeah, dogs and bears and animals, like, oh yeah, they've mammals and they have babies and they eat food and stuff like that, but the fear is that nature has another side to it, a mystical side, a magic that is beyond us and which we can never control and which can infect us and curse us and hold us. The same kind of fantasies that lie at the heart of a lot of werewolf fiction, where savage nature overtakes a human being and turns them into a monster, right? So, like, there's a lot of really fertile thematic ground with a Volibear who is like this horrifying 12-eyed monstrosity that stalks the Freljordian tundra, like consuming the minds of men and turning them against each other. That's interesting, but it does mean sacrificing this Volibear. It does mean this Volibear will no longer be the one we've got, the noble tribal leader who leads his Ursine people in the pursuit of safety and yada yada yada. So, is it going to be a good change? Like, Volibear in himself is kind of boring to me. I mean, I am kind of on the side of there was that Riot designer who said armored bears is never going to happen in this game because that's stupid. And I'm kind of on his side there, because it's kind of dumb to have an armored bear dude who's walking around in lightning. I don't know. Volibear was always kind of a confused concept to me. He didn't really work for me. And I thought he was more interesting when they turned him into a demigod, because that at least makes a little sense. But this idea of really contrasting, where Ornn is a sort of tangible demigod. He's the god of the forge. He's practical, he's sensible, he's tangible. He's not otherworldly or horrifying or anything. He's just a dude who likes to do smithing and who happens to be incredibly powerful. Then Volibear, as contrast, being this unknowable savage spirit of the beast kind of creature is a good contrast to that, and a good contrast to Anivia, who's always been portrayed as more of like a benevolent angelic guardian spirit, sort of holding onto the soul of the Freljord itself. So there's a good trifecta of different god archetypes in that kind of a conception. How they're going to resolve it, I don't know. Which means it's time now to move on to the implications for Udyr and Sejuani, and there's a really big one. Udyr wasn't afraid of the fight he would inevitably have with this creature. He wasn't afraid of anything. His head was clear, and in this certainty, he knew those were bad signs. The Volibear would consume him as readily as Sejuani, but his resolve did not falter. He had sworn an oath to protect Sejuani, as a father would, no matter the cost. You will not take her, Udyr spat. So Udyr is Sejuani's dad. That's what I am taking from this particular... Udyr is Sejuani's dad. And I don't have, like, we could say, oh yeah, maybe he's taking an oath to protect Sejuani, like he would if he was his father. Like, he has a fatherly relationship to her, but he's not, like, for real, definitely, for sure, 110% her father. It's not a confirmation. We could say that, but let's be real. He's her dad, and there's a couple of reasons why I think so. First of all, because Udyr defends Sejuani's mother, Kalkia. Kalkia had many failings. She was too prone to compromise, too quick to see defeat. I know how badly your mother failed you, but it was your grandmother who was our tribe's true coward, afraid of ever looking weak, afraid of... You will not speak ill of Sejuani, she warned. Even Kalkia was smart enough to avoid your grandmother's mistakes. Udyr openly defends Sejuani's mother to her face, and Sejuani and her mother have not... Like, Sejuani hates her mother. Like, a lot, and Udyr should know better, but he seems to be motivated by more than just a simple, like, a simple attempt to guide Sejuani. And, as it says in Udyr's bio, when the young spirit walker clawed his way out, he found few survivors. He'd been the victim of an avalanche that he caused. Fearing his destructive power, the Winter's Claw abandoned him. All save for one. A sympathetic Iceborn looked past Udyr's inner turmoil. She saw a man with strengths and flaws like any other, and the two cherished what little time they had together between the bitter demands of Freljordian life. As a Winter's Claw woman, she's an Iceborn, which, like, that's fairly few Winter's Claw people who are Iceborn, who has a relationship with Udyr briefly until Udyr eventually has to go away because Lee Sin shows up and takes him to Ionia. And then Udyr defends Sejuani as a father, and all throughout this story, we're sprinkled with implications like Udyr's like, oh, Udyr's so proud of her because he's seen her grow, he's seen her become a real war mother, and he's constantly reminiscing about how he guided her and how she's been growing, and he is afraid that as Sejuani grows up more and more and more, she's not going to need him anymore, he's not going to be useful to her anymore, he's going to be a burden to her. All of this is very parental concerns, these are very fatherly concerns. So to me, what the story here is telling us is just like, even besides the confirmation at the end, like the explicit confirmation at the end, which is a confirmation, Udyr is Sejuani's father. And that, to me, is interesting because that gives us... Because Udyr had always been kind of a disconnected character in the Freljord. Like, he was a Freljord dude, but he hung out with Lee Sin mostly. He was more of an Ionia champion. And he had that whole monk thing going on, and he wears those monk shoes, and like, there's spirit stuff and meditation and all that stuff, which he was always tied more to Lee Sin in Ionia. And yet he was part of the Freljord, and it was always an awkward fit. But now we have an actual connection. We have a character connection in the Freljord. He's got a personal reason to be there, to care, rather than just, oh, he happened to be born there, which is that he has a daughter there, he has a tribe there, he has a people there, and he has a mission that he wants to accomplish there. He has a purpose. And that's important because that also gives a lot more weight and pathos to his struggle with his shamanic power. All throughout the story, Udyr struggles to control his powers, which is, of course, the reason he went to Ionia with Lee Sin in the first place, is to learn control, is to learn to meditate, learn to shut out the voices of other creatures, because he's a very, very strong shaman. And the problem with being a really strong shaman is that, yeah, you can feel the thoughts and feelings of animals and people, but you can't necessarily not feel the thoughts and feelings of animals and people. So when there are really frightened or powerful animals around, or if there's a lot of animals and people around, he's overwhelmed by all of this noise, all of this emotional noise that just kind of pummels his head, which also makes him more vulnerable to the domination of Volibear. But because he's been to Ionia, because he's learned a lot of techniques, including jamming a nail through his own hand, in order to control his powers, in order to control the power of the voices that are constantly haunting him, he's also one of the few people who can stand against the will of the Volibear. And again, like, all of that gets a lot more pathos, like, there's a lot more tragedy, and there's a lot more meaning to the suffering that he inflicts on himself when we know that he's doing it for the sake of a daughter, for the sake of a child, for the sake of family, rather than just, oh, he's devoted to the Winter's Claw because of some honor reasons or something. Like, the personal connection to me is a much stronger motivation, and it works a lot better. And it also works really well for me because one of Sejuani's things in her new story conception, ever since War Mother, has been that she has this awful, awful relationship with her mother. Like, she just hates her mother. She thinks her mother was weak and stupid, and that she was ruining the Winter's Claw, and she was failing the entire tribe. And she wants more desperately than anything not to be like her mother. She wants to be like her grandmother, who everybody else is like, no, your grandmother was kind of a bitch. Actually, she was not a great leader. She was kind of terrible in a lot of ways. And so Sejuani has this set of mommy issues, basically. She has these parental issues, and she doesn't know Udyr is her father. She has never known her father. And Udyr is taking it on himself to try and guide her, to try and raise her, to try and do what a father should for her. And, like, there's really good potential for tragedy and character building in there. There's really good potential for a lot of drama and for a lot of character development, which is something Sejuani has always kind of lacked, because in her earliest conception, she was just like, Ash wants to have peace and Sejuani wants to have war, because war is war, fighting, yay, good strength, something, power, blah, blah, might makes right. Like, it was not... She didn't have a great conception as a character, but now we have an emotional and psychological reason for why Sejuani is the way she is. It's because she has seen her mother fail so terribly, and she has seen the consequences of those kinds of failures. And as she puts it in the story, we're out of time, Udyr. Sejuani indicated the sagging yurts around her. We must take that city across the river or freeze. She gestured to a few of her older warriors nearby. Most of the Longtooths skip meal to feed their young. Yesterday I helped Orgai bury her daughter. Sejuani's lips, purple from the cold, tightened bitterly. The child was 2 summers, but as small and frail as one of its first spring. She exhaled and looked away before continuing. I will not be responsible for another child growing too thin to survive the cold. And that is a very different character than the brutal sort of Conan the Barbarian-esque war leader who's like, see your enemies driven before you and hear the lamentations of the women. Like, the one who's just kind of power-obsessed and doesn't really have a lot of depth of character. With Sejuani, we understand what motivates her to be so brutal, to be so uncompromising, and to be so obsessed with strength and power and being a strong leader rather than tolerating the weak, to have everybody be strong so the tribe can survive, so everyone can be safe, so no one has to starve. And that gives her a good contrast to Ash, who's like, no, we save the weak, and we make sacrifices, and we don't just rely on strength all the time, because it's not the only way to be. Their conflict is much more believable, and her conflict with Udyr also makes a lot more sense, because Udyr is all about self-control now. That's his whole thing. His whole character arc is about how do you keep control of yourself in the face of, like, overwhelming rage and anger, in the face of overwhelming demands from others. Udyr, his power is empathy. Like, he has the power to hear and feel and understand how every living creature around him feels. Those demands impose themselves upon him. Sejuani is the same way. She has all the demands, the needs, the fears, the responsibility of everyone under her is weighing on her all the time. So there's something there that Udyr can teach her about how to control that, like, all those needs, how to handle all those conflicting responsibilities, and how to steel yourself against it and be strong against it. So, like, there's a lot of really good potential for character in the version of the Freljord that's being set up here. There's a lot of good character development there. There's a lot of really strong psychological depth to these characters that you can explore in a way that makes the Freljord a lot more satisfying than just some Vikings fighting each other over, I don't know, for some reasons. And it also gives a lot more, the fundamental thread of the Freljord is the Watchers in the Abyss. It's Lysandra and the Frost Priests who are manipulating the events of the Freljord in order to ensure that, you know, she's trying to delay it, but in order to ensure that she can survive when the Watchers inevitably, and the Void inevitably breaks through the Howling Abyss. And in order for Lysandra to be able to manipulate the world like that, in order for her to be able to manipulate the Avarosans and the Winter's Claw against each other, there has to be these interpersonal conflicts. There has to be these emotional, strongly held personal ideals and beliefs that she can manipulate. So she has some levers to pull. So she has some emotional strings to pull with the characters. And that's something that this story has done a hell of a lot to add. Along with War Mother, by the way, which we will also have to cover at some point, because it's actually a really, really good comic that more people should read. There's a lot of really, really good stuff happening in the Freljord, and I'm quite excited for it. This is something I've been begging for a long time with League of Legends, like a deepening of the characters, rather than just expanding on everything, to deepen the characters, to deepen, like, what's their motivations, what are their stories, what are they supposed to do. Now, of course, the game is, will Riot actually properly follow through on it consistently for the next 5 or 6 years, or maybe in some upcoming other video game that maybe they're making. Because the Freljord will be a good setting for that. Who knows? Anyway, that's enough for this video. If you have enjoyed this video, hit the like button and subscribe button and comment and bell icon and all the stuff, because numbers go up and YouTube lets my channel survive. That's how it works on this hell platform. If you want to support this channel directly, then Patreon is an option. As I usually say at the end of my videos, even $1 that you give to a content creator directly is worth 1,000 or 2,000 views easily on a YouTube video. Like, it's infinitely more valuable than just the view of the ad, and I'd much prefer not to have to rely on advertising. So whether it's me or another content creator you like, if you can support us directly, please do so with whatever you're able to. And if you don't want to sign up for a monthly subscription, I have got some tip jars down below that you click on and say, give me a tip for, like, hey, you made a video that was nice, I enjoyed that, here's a tip. And that also is extremely helpful. So if you want to do that, then that's an option. If you don't want to do that, or you can't, I get it. Like, money is tight always. And I'm just happy that you watched the video this far. If you haven't enjoyed this video, of course, you can click the dislike button down below to let YouTube's algorithm... What? What? No? What do you mean, gone? It's not... I'm not looking at it right... It's not gone, it's right... What? Oh, that's son... Okay. How the hell did he make it out of cardboard? But it's like... Oh my god. Okay, listen. Yeah, if you don't like this video, you can click the dislike button down. But instead of clicking the dislike button, just, because... There's a little thing, I'll deal with it later, but just, like, take a marker and, like, put a mark on your screen next to the dislike button, and I'll count them all later, and I'll add them all up to the dislike button. It's just, cause, like, there's the thing with the dislike button. Anyway, get the weapons! And get the dogs! We can't let him get away!